What if the reason you are not building wealth has nothing to do with how much you earn, nothing to do with your discipline, nothing to do with your intelligence? What if it comes down to 1%, not 50%, not 10%? Stay with me, because what I am about to show you is going to completely change the way you think about building wealth. And the most surprising part, it starts smaller than you think. Most people have the same conversation with themselves every January. This is the year I get serious about money. This is the year I finally start investing. This is the year I cut back and build something real. And then February arrives. And the big ambitious plan quietly falls apart. Not because they are lazy, not because they do not care, because the plan was too big. Because somewhere in human psychology, there is a gap between what we intend and what we actually do. And that gap has a name. Behavioral economists call it the intention-action gap. The distance between wanting to change and actually changing. And here is what decades of research have consistently shown about that gap. Big goals widen it. Small goals close it. 1% closes it. Before I explain how I want you to meet someone, his name is Victor, 36 years old, works in project management at a mid-sized company. Decent salary, not spectacular, but decent. Victor is the kind of man who knows more about money than most people around him. He reads, he watches videos like this one, he follows the right people online, he knows what he should be doing. And that is exactly what made his situation so frustrating. Because Victor had all the information, and still at 36 he had almost nothing saved. Not because he was reckless, not because he was irresponsible, because every time Victor tried to change his financial life, he tried to change all of it at once. He would open a savings account and commit to putting away $500 a month. 2 months and an unexpected expense would wipe the momentum. He would commit to cutting his spending dramatically. 3 weeks in the restriction would feel unbearable and he would overcorrect. He would start an investment account, watch the market move, get nervous, stop contributing. Every attempt was genuine. Every attempt collapsed. Not because Victor lacked willpower, because Victor was trying to leap when what he needed to do was step. And then one evening, sitting at his kitchen table, frustrated, staring at a bank balance that had not meaningfully changed in 3 years, Victor discovered something so small he almost dismissed it. 1%. The 1% rule is not a new concept. But what most people miss about it is this. It is not just a financial strategy. It is a psychological one. Here is the principle in its simplest form. Every month, do 1% more than last month. That is it. Not 5% more, not 10% more. 1. Save or invest just 1% more than you did last month. Cut just 1% of unnecessary spending. Repeat it consistently. And then most importantly, let compounding do the rest. Now, I know what you are thinking. 1%? That is nothing. And you are right. At first, it is almost nothing. But here is where the human brain makes its most expensive mistake. We judge the value of a habit by how it feels in the moment we start it. And 1% in the moment feels invisible. So we dismiss it. We do not start it. We wait for the moment when we can do something significant, something that feels like it matters. And that moment, that feeling almost never arrives. Because the truth is this, significance is not a feeling. Significance is an outcome. And the outcome of 1% repeated consistently is not invisible. It is extraordinary. Let me show you exactly what I mean. If you currently save nothing and you start saving just 1% of your income this month, you will barely notice it is gone. Next month, you save 2%. Still barely noticeable. Month, 3%. Month, 6%. By the end of 1 year, you are saving 12% of your income. Not because you made a dramatic leap, because you took 12 invisible steps. And here is what makes this powerful beyond the mathematics. At each step, your brain adapted. Your lifestyle adjusted. Your identity shifted. By the time you are saving 12%, it does not feel like sacrifice. It feels normal because it became normal. 1 quiet percent at a time. Victor tried it. Not with conviction at first. With skepticism. He looked at his last month's spending and found the 1%. Not $500. Not $200. $34. That was his 1%. $34 redirected from spending into a savings account. He remembers thinking, this is embarrassing. $34 is not going to change my life. And he was right. $34 did not change his life. But the decision did. Because here is what Victor did not understand yet. The 1% was never about the money. Not at first. It was about the vote. Every time you make a financial decision, however small, you cast a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. $34 was Victor casting a vote, saying, I am someone who builds. I am someone who takes action even when the action feels small. I am someone who does not wait for the perfect moment to start. And that vote compounded across months, changed his identity before it changed his bank account. This is the part most financial content skips. They talk about the math, They show you the compound interest charts. They tell you what 1% becomes over 20 years. And all of that is true, but it misses the real mechanism. The real mechanism is not compound interest. The real mechanism is compound identity. The person you become by consistently doing the small thing is a fundamentally different person than the one who waited for the big moment. And that different person makes different decisions every day, every month, every year. Until the gap between where they started and where they are becomes from the outside something that looks like luck. 3 months into the 1% rule, Victor hit his first real test. His car needed repairs. Unexpectedly, significant. The old Victor would have dipped into savings if he hadn't shrugged and restarted the cycle of trying and failing. But this Victor did something different. He did not touch the savings account. He looked at his spending and found 1% more to cut. Not dramatically, not painfully, just 1 more percent. Because by this point, finding 1% had become a skill, a muscle he had been training for 3 months. He knew where to look. He knew what he could do without disrupting his life. And the savings account stayed intact. That moment, that small, invisible moment of not touching the account when everything in him wanted to, was worth more than any amount he had deposited, because it proved something to Victor. Something he had not believed about himself in 3 years of trying, that he could hold the line, that he had built something not just in the account, but in himself. That was the moment the 1% rule stopped being a strategy and became a part of who Victor was. Now, let me talk about the spending side, because most people think about the 1% rule only in terms of saving more. But cutting 1% of unnecessary spending is equally powerful. And I want to be specific about what that means. 1% of unnecessary spending is not deprivation. It is not cutting everything you enjoy. It is not punishing yourself for having lived normally. It is finding the one thing, just one, that you are spending on out of habit rather than intention. The subscription you forgot you had. The daily purchase that delivers comfort rather than value. The upgrade you chose because it was available, not because you needed it. 1%, not your lifestyle. Just one small thing that is costing you without genuinely serving you. And here is what Victor found when he started looking. He was not overspending dramatically. He was overspending consistently. Small amounts, regular amounts, amounts that individually meant nothing. Together, they were quietly absorbing the difference between where he was and where he wanted to be. Each 1% cut did not feel like sacrifice. It felt like clarity, like removing something he had never really chosen in the first place. 6 months into the 1% rule, something shifted in Victor that surprised him. He stopped dreading his finances. He had spent 3 years avoiding his bank account the way most people avoid a difficult conversation. Opening it felt like confrontation, like evidence of failure. But 6 months of small, consistent action had changed the texture of that experience. Now, when Victor opened his account, he saw something different. Not wealth, not yet, but movement. And movement after years of stillness felt like everything. He started reading more about personal finance, not because he felt behind, because he felt curious. He started having conversations about money he had always avoided. He started noticing his spending before it happened, not just after. Not because he had become disciplined in the way people talk about discipline, but because his identity had quietly shifted. He was someone who paid attention now. And people who pay attention build wealth. Not because they earn more, because they see more. Here is the deeper truth about the 1% rule that I want you to carry with you. Wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in the quiet ones. The moment you redirect $34 instead of spending it, the moment you cancel the subscription you forgot about, the moment you do not touch the savings account when everything says you should, the moment you choose the 1% cut instead of waiting until you can cut more, each of these moments is invisible from the outside. They do not show up on social media. Nobody congratulates you for them. They feel in the moment like almost nothing. But they are not nothing. They are everything. Because they are the votes. The consistent, compounding, identity-building votes for the person you are becoming. And the person you are becoming is the most important financial asset you will ever build. By month 12, Victor had saved more than he had in the previous 3 years combined. Not because he had dramatically increased his income, not because he had found a secret investment, because he had taken 12 steps. Each one is invisible, each one building on the last. And something else had happened that the numbers did not fully capture. Victor trusted himself with money for the first time in his adult life, not because he had become perfect, because he had become consistent. And consistency repeated across time builds the one thing that all the financial strategies in the world cannot give you. Trust in yourself. The belief that when you say you are going to do something, you actually do it. That belief that quiet self-trust is what wealthy people have that most people mistake for discipline or intelligence or luck. It is none of those things. It is the accumulated result of keeping small promises to yourself over and over again, 1% at a time. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not a complex strategy, not a 10-step plan, not a list of habits to adopt all at once. Just one question. What is your 1% this month? Not your 5%, not your transformation plan, your 1%. The single small thing you can do differently with money this month that is so small it almost feels embarrassing to start. Start there. Because that embarrassingly small step taken consistently becomes the foundation of something real, something that compounds, something that builds not just wealth in your account, but confidence in yourself. And 6 months from now, 12 months from now, when you look back at the person who started with 1%, you will understand something that Victor understood sitting at his kitchen table at month 12. The size of the step never mattered. The consistency of the step was everything. Classy Wealth exists for exactly this kind of conversation, the one that gives you something real, something you can actually use tomorrow morning. Not theory, not inspiration, that fades by Friday. A principle you can apply today with $34 or whatever your 1% is. Subscribe because the next video is going to take this further. We are going to talk about why most people who finally start saving stop within 6 months. Not because they run out of money, because of something happening psychologically that nobody warned them about, and understanding it in advance is the difference between the person who starts and the person who finishes. Until then, find your 1%. Start today, not Monday. Today,